Hello, I'm Peter Dawe, and what I want to talk about today is a tool which I've developed which helps me look at the world in a very exciting and clear way. I'm calling this tool the Dawe Diagram. What it does is allows you to look at a decision or an activity or something like that in two dimensions. One dimension is time and the other dimension is geography. So what I'll do is I will show how I constructed the idea and then do some examples of how one might use this tool in real life. So if we do a chart, on this we can put time. So now 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or it could be days or any other time frame. And then make a decision about whether you're going to university, for example. And what we're going to plot on this particular diagram is the cost to you. So when you go to university, you will go down as you're spending the money. And then once you graduate at year 3, you'll rapidly start to earn more money. So that is a one-dimensional view of a decision. However, what you might want to do is actually look at this as an aspect of your family. And there you have a slightly different curve. They also make a small contribution to you, but that contribution doesn't really come back until much later in your life. We look at the community. Society also makes a contribution to you, but once you've got your degree, the idea is that society gives you a contribution as well. And so you can actually do additional curves for different geographies of that particular decision. What we can do is take all of those graphs and put them into a single chart, but instead of having them going up and down, what we can do is use shades to indicate whether it's positive or negative, or colours indeed, whether it's positive or negative. So what we can do now, taking that chart again, is make it red if you're costing you money, and black if it's making you money. But now we can actually look at, so that's me. We can do family, we can do community, we can do region, we can do mankind on this. So the family, it was red all the way through until right at the end. Community was red and then like that. And the rest is actually neutral on this one. So what we're getting now is a picture of how things affect you, or how a decision affects society. This really gets interesting when you start looking at political decisions, because by charting what they're talking about, you can actually understand why so many politicians are arguing. So let's take something like climate change. Okay. Climate change would affect people in the short term very negatively because we enjoy a society where we're burning fossil fuels and what have you. So if we change our policies for climate change, what we find is that it's actually quite negative in the short term for everyone. But that in the long term, it's positive for everyone. Now, if you're a politician who is judged on a short term, the tendency is that you'll try to maximise there and ignore there. Even if, from an individual's perspective, they are prepared to do that. On the other hand, the Green Party and what have you, what they're looking to do is to maximise here, long term, with lots of, for the world. So by putting this graph into the two dimensions of time and geography, we can actually see how people are seeing the future, what they're trying to maximise. Well, I can use this chart to think about one's own life and how one lives one's life. I've used the example of my values and my wife's values. My values, what I tend to work for, is to do positive things up here. I tend to think about where humanity is going as a whole group in the long term. And a lot of the work that I do is about trying to make that a good place. My wife, on the other hand, is a counsellor. She works with individuals who've got problems, and what she does is seek to work in this particular area. Small numbers of people in relatively small time frames. Both pictures are valid. What you can do is actually see that on a lot of things, our priorities diverge, but you can see why they diverge. Okay, she's busy sorting out people's individual problems on a today basis, whereas I'm worrying about climate change, sea level rise, and artificial intelligence. We have different views of the world. Using this idea of plotting where you are in geography and time at the same time explains a lot of political debate. When people are talking about Brexit or about health policies, anything like that, typically what you'll hear is that politicians are actually seeking to maximise for a different community or for a different timescale. Using a Dawe diagram allows you to see clearly where these diversions go. A Dawe diagram can be used in the corporate sense, where you can look at your employees, your shareholders, your customers, and society, and look at your decisions in terms of time. Quite often you see corporate decisions where they're so single-mindedly maximising for short-term shareholder value that they ignore perhaps some very negatives in other areas. Certainly when one is assessing how other people are working, by putting what you think they're doing into a Dawe diagram, you can actually see the context of whether they're working short-term or long-term, whether they're working for a small group or a large group. You can also use a Dawe diagram to plot the effect of people's lives on the world and society. Let's take the example of Margaret Thatcher, or in particular when she was Prime Minister. So we can look at her and her party, corporates, the population of the UK, Europe and the world on that chart, and look at time when she was elected. And basically when she was elected, there was a long period where it was really good for her until they kicked her out when it wasn't so good. From the Tories' point of view, they actually enjoyed parliamentary success beyond her leaving. From a corporate's point of view, she was a very successful and helpful. From the UK's perspective, there were some people who it benefited, but also there was a whole class of people who she didn't benefit. From Europe's perspective, I think you can say that she was fairly negative about the EU and Europe. And from the world's perspective, well, of course, what you do have is a particular bit here, which is Argentina, where she was very negative. And so again, you can build up a chart of her impact. And interestingly, even after she left office, one could argue that her effect propagated on beyond her period. Indeed, many people say that the society we live in today is very much spawned from those Thatcher years. So what you can do is actually build a picture in 2 dimensions of time and geography about a person's life. Dawe diagrams I see can be used in a whole range of areas. I've just used 2 colours, using shades of grey to colour a chart as to whether it's really bad or really good. You can even use colours, false colours, to plot more than one variable on the particular chart. Dawe diagrams are a great help for me. They help me understand where I'm going and what decisions I am, and it helps me understand what other people are thinking, because I can plot their policies and their ideas onto a chart and work out where they're coming from. And that's half the battle in understanding how you might change their views when you're working at this level. And that's a Dawe diagram. Thank you very much.